The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today we will be answering listener emails, and for the next few episodes, we will be answering questions about American reaction to some of Trump's proposed policies. We have a question from Thomas, who lives in Boston, Massachusetts. Thomas asks, in a recent interview this weekend, Speaker Johnson, Dr. Gershwer's favorite politician, said that Medicaid cuts will impact only those who are abusing coverage. Yeah, I heard that speech. It was also pointed out that the trillion-dollar cuts will provide an increase to defense. This all seems chaotic, and no one seems really to know what this spending bill is all about. To make things even more strange, Elon Musk raised concerns about President Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending cuts package, saying in a video released Tuesday, that would be May 27th, that he believes it would raise the U.S. budget deficit and undercut efforts by the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. So, what do you think? Should we actually be listening to Musk? Mark, Scott?
Is the question is, should we be listening to Musk? The answer is no, please.
Yeah, and the rest of the question is...
Well, I think the question's a premise. The premise is that nobody really knows what this bill is about. We were talking about this earlier. There's so much that we just don't know. It's almost impossible. Let's remember, there's no such thing as a clean bill that comes through Congress. There's going to be riders all over the place onto it. It's just that it's the way things are done and negotiated in the Congress. Unless you're willing to sit down and read this massive volume, and sometimes it's many massive volumes of paperwork to figure out what all is in the bill, people are going to sneak things in there. I think that's one of the big things that needs to change with government, that if you can't put it down a law and you can't put it down in 5 pages, you can't present it to the Congress. There is a rule that, they have to have 72 hours to be able to go through it. And some of these budgets, they bring them in on carts, and there's these just massive volumes. And I don't care how big your staff is, you're not going to get through all of the pages and all of the things in this bill. I'd love to be able to answer this question, Thomas from Boston. I really would. And yes, I do know that Speaker Mike Johnson is Dr. Gershwer's favorite politician, kind of. I know I listened to the same interview that you listened to, where he said that this was only to get abuse, although he did not say how it was going to be getting abuse. And he couldn't even describe what exactly the abuse was, which was interesting. So it's just putting out that talking point. $1 trillion, yep, some of it's going to go to defense, like we need to spend more money on defense. Who the hell are we defending ourselves against at this point in time? I have no idea. But obviously there's some big boogeyman out there that we have to be very, very careful of. And Elon Musk, should we listen to Elon Musk? No, we shouldn't. But I will say this. What he said about the deficit is correct. That is not an endorsement by me to say, yes, we should start listening to Elon Musk about anything else. But what he said about the deficit is, I believe, correct. And it's going to hurt a lot of people. And it's not going to bring about the fiscal responsibility that it is supposedly intended to. And always remember, we have no idea what's in those massive volumes. We have no idea. Scott?
So I am fortunate enough to have not watched Mike Johnson on TV, because when I do, I have to go out and buy a new TV, because I can't help but walk up to the TV and punch him in the face and destroy my TV. And I know I've done it 5 times now, and I know it's not a smart thing to do. But when he gets up there with that, ever so complacent face that never gets ruffled, doesn't have a single wrinkle on it. He looks like some kind of bathtub toy. And he says the mantra, fraud, waste, and abuse, by forcing able-bodied workers, young men, to go out and get a job. I probably couldn't refrain from punching the TV if I heard him say that. The defense spending and the Medicaid, his message to young people, young men specifically, are part and parcel of the same thing. The Johnson said, "You're cheating the system, and nobody in the country believes that's right. So there's a moral component to what we're doing. When you make young men work, it's good for them. It's good for their dignity. It's good for their self-worth, and it's good for the community that they live in." And then you say to them, "Okay, and we're going to take that money and we're going to have the biggest military in the world, which we already have by 9 times, I think, and we're going to have the most lethal military in the world." And young men go, "Yeah, that's what we want to have. We want to have the greatest military in the world, is capable of killing anybody anywhere in the world." And they love that stuff too. So this all is supposed to appeal to young people. But it's all based on a lie, as so much republicanism is. It's based on a lie. And the lie here is that Medicaid enrollees are employable but unemployed. And according to census figures, that's not true. 44% of Medicaid recipients work full-time. 20% work part-time, probably in more than one job. An additional 12% weren't working because they were taking care of their family at home. And then 10% are ill or disabled. 6% are students, 4% are retired, and 4% just can't find work, and the remaining 2% we don't really know about. But it's a 2%. Okay, we don't really know what's going on there. In other words, most people who get Medicaid are already working. We also know that if they cut Medicaid, then something close to 9 million people are not going to have health care benefits at all by 2034. That's the reason why people are against cutting Medicaid. The Republican Party has done an amazing job over decades, right? We could at least go back to Reagan, if not before, sort of telling young American men that the path to manhood is struggle. That you have to fight through it. You have to go out there and get yourself a shit job somewhere, or you have to go out there and you have to join the military or something like that. And it's a little bizarre, the whole thing. That, especially that Mike Johnson, of all people, who we know when he was 25 years old, had a 12-year-old son, ward, whatever they wanted to call it, relationship with a young man before he met his future wife, and she helped him pray the gay away. So I just had to mention that. There is no moral lesson here. If you look at who gets Medicaid in the United States, you'll see that there are 5 states that get most of it. And those 5 states are West Virginia, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And that they have more than double the amount of Medicaid recipients than any other state. States like the one I live in, Connecticut, has less than 3%. They have over 7%. And if you really wanted to do something about the cost of Medicaid, you would go to those states, Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, and West Virginia, and you would say to them, you've got to get yourself down to 3% of people in your state on Medicaid, not over 7%. And that would reduce, I don't know what the actual number is, but hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in savings. And it's arbitrary. It's cruel. It probably the wrong people will lose it, and the right people will the wrong people will be able to continue it. But that's really the main way that you can help stop overages, let's call them, in Medicaid. By the way, this is kind of a weird thing, huh? Most of the male adults who are disabled are mentally or cognitively disabled, not physically disabled. So I'm not sure exactly how you square that with what the speaker is asserting.
I mean, I'm just reading here from the League of Women Voters. In my state, South Carolina, 18.8% of the population is on Medicaid.
Wow.
That's quite a few. Another one that it says here, again, this is League of Women Voters, where I'm not sure, I've not checked these numbers. New Mexico has the highest percentage of Medicaid recipients compared to other states. So there's, but then again, New Mexico has an expanded Medicaid program, which allows more people to be to be eligible for Medicaid as compared to those states that which do not. So that probably answers the question as to why that is the way it is. But yeah,
where where does New York fall in that? I'm just curious.
I'm
thinking about Mike Johnson as a bath toy floating along as a dough,
here we go.
So
you know what? I apologize. I wasn't looking at Medicaid. I was looking at Social Security disability.
Social Security. Okay.
My bad.
Oops.
Which I think they get Medicaid with them,
right,
but it's not all told Medicaid.
Now this does not give the percentages, unfortunately. So the top with 12 million, California.
Of course, biggest
New
state.
York, no, of course, most populous state.
So New York, I'm sure Texas is second, right?
No, New York second at 5.8 million. Texas third at 3.8 million.
Oh, because they didn't take Obamacare expansion.
Correct.
Right,
Florida,
okay. Gotcha.
Florida comes in next at 3.6 million. Illinois at 2.9 million. Pennsylvania at 2.7, Ohio 2.6 million, North Carolina 2.4 million, Michigan 2.1 million, and then Arizona with 1.8 million. And again, it doesn't give the percentages, and it doesn't divide out. Well, actually, it does. California has the expansion. New York has the expansion. Texas and Florida do not. Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Michigan, Arizona, and Washington all have the expansions. Georgia, who is just below Arizona and Washington, does not. So those ones with the expansion you can understand because, of course, the expansion offers it to more. South Carolina, believe it or not, even though it was 18%, they do not have the expansion. And I'm sure it would be even higher if they did. So yeah, again, it's kind of in ways comparing apples and oranges in some ways, because those states that have the expansion, of course, are going to have a larger amount of people participating. And also the states with the larger population. But as far as the percentages are concerned, somebody would have to sit down and do the math. And no.
But just going back to the census figures, right? So 44% of Medicaid recipients work full-time, 20% work part-time, so that's 64. An additional 12% were not working because they were taking care of their family at home, and let's just do the last one, 10% were ill or disabled. And then you have students, right? And then you have retirees. Medicaid is, most of the people who get Medicaid are already working. 64% of people who get Medicaid are already working. So there's a myth out there that these people are just sitting back enjoying their health care benefits. It's not true.
Right. Well, for the MAGA group that really like to see red states do very well, the bottom of that list is Wyoming, with 57,000 people on Medicaid. Of course, they have a population of, 57,002. So who knows? And I'm not picking on Wyoming. We love Wyoming. Wyoming's a beautiful place, great expanses, great scenery. But again, it goes by the size of the state. 57,000 is probably at least 10% of Wyoming's population is on Medicaid. And I'd say that's probably about status quo. And Wyoming does not have the expansion. So there you have it. Should we listen to Musk? maybe when he says that Trump's an idiot, then we should listen to him. Anything else, just ignore him. He's back to working his nose to the grindstone because his companies are failing, and hopefully we've answered that.
And boy, what a failure Doge was. It was horrible. What a terrible failure.
Absolutely horrid.
Well, I'm sure we'll cover that in the future. We don't.
I'm sure we're going to hit. I'm sure. Yes.
Yes, and I agree. Also, no, do not bother to listen to Musk at all. And as far as adding to the debt, I mean, if all you have to do, I think, is look at the General Accounting Office. There's some nonpartisan government watchdog, and it may not even be part of the government anymore, and not because now the federal government cannot be trusted with its own numbers. Non-governmental organization, and they crunch the numbers. Or Goldman Sachs, for example, people who know what they're talking about, economists, everybody who is intelligent and educated will say that this bill is terrible and the deficit should not be increased. And here Trump is busy talking about golden domes and all kinds of ridiculous ideas, and still talking about annexing Canada and making it the 51st state, and it just nonsense. So no, Musk needs to go back and attend to his businesses, and he never should have been busy with government in the first place.
Well, he paid for it though, Brooke. He did pay for it.
He did, but he also enriched himself by giving himself contracts and stuff like that. So whether he will equal out in the end as far as finances go, I have no idea. But he did not belong messing around with the federal government in the first place. But of course, with Trump, it's all about making the biggest mess possible and then blaming it on somebody else. I still can't figure out what the end goal is. I mean, with making America a rentier state and losing jobs and creating more joblessness and homelessness, I don't understand how the United States economy or the population is supposed to, over time, be able to. I mean, Trump obviously is not going to live that long relative to someone like Vance, who's 39 or 40 or something. I don't understand how the long term is supposed to. It doesn't work. I mean, you cannot collapse the economy, collapse the population with an aging population, force women to have children and not give them the care that they need, and impoverish a great deal of your population and expect anybody to be able to afford anything to support the wealthy. It doesn't work. I don't understand what unless it's après-midi de la luge, after me, after Trump, he doesn't care because he's not going to be around. So as long as it serves him, he's fine with it. It's just for a long-term, durable strategy for the United States, this does not work at all.
Well, it works to make the rich richer and the powerful more powerful.
Not forever, not when there's nothing left.
Well, it'll work as long as you have whatever the natural resource that you're exploiting continues, right? So Arab states that depend on oil will continue to be Arab states that depend on oil as long as there's oil and the need for it. And they seem to be doing very well and have been for quite some time. Venezuela got messed up, right? Because when Obama decided to ask the Arab countries and OPEC to decrease to raise the amount of oil that they put onto the market, decreasing the price of every barrel, Venezuela got caught in that shitstorm, and that's why their entire infrastructure, government, everything fell apart. Before that, they were a thriving society. So it's possible that there could be a sustainable rentier state, but if, as I suspect, the reason or the resource is the consumer, that I'm not sure is sustainable. But I don't know that these guys are really thinking all this stuff through.
No, it's not sustainable, and I don't understand why the powers that be don't seem to see that.
Actually, Brooke, I can answer that, but because the way that Trump looks at the world right now, he sees that there can be three superpowers, and that we could all get along, right? This is the end game of him saying, I get along very well with Xi, I get along very well with Putin. The end game there is that China, Russia, and the United States could all become enormous imperial powers dedicated to not interfering with one another, right? That's a big part of it. And allowing each other free reign in whatever spheres of influence they carve up the world into being. Presumably, Russia would get, the Middle East and a good part of Europe, or maybe all of Europe. China would get the entire Pacific Rim and, Asia, probably even India. And the United States would get the Western Hemisphere and probably parts of the Middle East. And we would all stay in our lanes and continue to enrich ourselves the way that the European powers did when they were the only game in town, going back into, I don't know, the 1600s. So I think that that's something that could be sustainable as long as you have plenty of other people's resources to exploit. It sounds crazy and far-fetched, but I actually think that he looks at that and says we could actually do this. And maybe he read 1984 and he said, that's not a bad idea. And this is where we are.
Yeah, I've heard that that hypothesis, thesis, whatever you want to call it, before, and I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I just don't know if we're going to get there at the rate that we're going in this country, with the tariffs and everything else, and Canada and other countries. They're not waiting for us, and they're creating other alliances, and they're attending to their own interests. We're being isolated, which is not, picking a tariff war with China, if you want to carve up the world into spheres of influence, is not exactly a wise decision. And offending the Chinese, as Vance did by calling them peasants, is not a wise use of words. And we were talking before in an earlier podcast about the importance of words and using words wisely, and neither of these men appears able to be judicious with words spoken in public. They must be the arrogance. That's all I can think of is that they believe that the United States is manifest destiny, and we're so entitled that this is naturally what's going to happen, and everyone else is naturally going to fall into line, and that is not how it works.
I guess if you're the one of three superpowers in the world, it might.
It may be. You could be correct. I don't know, Mark. What do you think?
Think that we are so far off the poor question, it's not even funny.
Yeah, I know, it's my fault again for meandering.
And it was yeah. History, you could take a lot from history, and there have been many empires in world history, even in ancient times, that divided up the world as they knew it into spheres of influence. And you know what? There is one thing that is common about all of them: they all fell. They all failed because that strategy did not work. Now, you can make the argument that they failed because, the Byzantines failed because they were technologically behind us today. Yeah, okay. They would never have been able to. The Romans couldn't have stood up to us. Come on. But the fact is that there's one common thread. When you are trying to divide up the world into spheres of influence, and you're trying to do it by force, eventually that empire fails. We get far more with cooperation than we ever do with conquering. We get far more with cooperation than we do with colonialism. The United States as a country has risen to the point that it has risen to today because of its ability to work together. What we're doing today is the first signs of our downfall. And it is historically proven that this is the way things go. When a country begins to think of colonialism, imperialism, and I've always said this, nationalism is politics for simple, stupid people because it's easy to follow. Yay us, boo everybody else, without thinking about anything else. So to me, it's a sad tale. It truly is. It's a sad tale about the condition that we're in, and that's about all I could say about it. I can apologize to our listener that we went off so far onto that tangent, but it was fun.
What was the topic again?
Yeah, no, we shouldn't be listening to Musk, and we did answer the question. I just I don't know what I did to dive off the other side of the bridge and swim off in a different direction, so I apologize. Did we have any more to add?
No, just an apology to our editing partners. I'm sorry for this.
Yes, my fault again. All righty, so thank you, Thomas, for your question and for your listening to us as we ramble and meander off topic, as always. And thank you again, everyone, for listening, and do stay safe. And we'll see you again next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. The JCIS is a publication of NovaWorks, a scholarly depository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description.